In this episode of the Cole Memo, I'll be giving a short legislative recap. In short, nothing happened this session with related to cannabis and hemp legislation. Honestly, you could stop the show right now if you wanted to, but I'm going to peel the page back and give you a little bit of details, and I'm going to try to keep it under 15 minutes. Folks, you're tuned in to the Cole Memo. My name is Cole Preston. Every episode is released in audio, video, and transcript format. To find the transcript, audio, or video version of any episode, please refer to the description of the episode that you're listening to now. Within that description, you can find a link that will take you to our website, which will display the transcript for this episode and the platforms where you can find this episode in audio or video formats. If you're unable to locate the episode description on whichever platform you're listening from, simply take note of the episode number and visit thecolememo.com. From there, you can find the corresponding episode, and then you'll be able to access the audio, video, and transcript version of that episode. You might also find any links that we reference during the episode so that you might be able to do your own research. If you're not listening to this episode of the Cole Memo on Patreon, then you're listening to this episode a little bit later than our patrons. To become a patron, go to thecolememo.com/Patreon. It only costs $3 a month, and it allows you to get instant access to our episodes as they release. You can also support our show at thecolememo.com/support. Once again, that's thecolememo.com/support. You can make a one-time monthly or yearly contribution of your choice. And one of the best ways to support our show is absolutely free. Subscribe to or follow the show. Leave a positive review from wherever you're listening to us from. Favorite this episode, give it a thumbs up, leave a comment, or share it with your best friend. Today is May 30th, 2024, and yesterday, May 29th, the Illinois House of Representatives adjourned around 5 a.m. Can you believe that? They were working through the night, and there were three measures that ultimately did not make it through the House after Senate passage. According to WBEZ Chicago, a measure which was opposed by Pritzker's office that would have made key reforms to the Illinois Prison Review Board did not make it through. Also, an omnibus cannabis measure and another measure that would have banned hemp products like Delta 8. State Representative LaShawn Ford said both the cannabis and hemp measures didn't have the required 60 votes to pass. Once again, that's basically the bulk of this episode, but right now what I'm going to do is peel back the page and tell you some details you may not have heard, or you may have heard. Some of these have been reported in the media. So really quick, ACE, the Alliance for Cannabis Equity, released their legislative proposals for 2024. I first shared them on January 22nd, 2024. I'll give a link for this entire article in the podcast description or in the show notes, so you can check this out if you'd like to. But here are the proposals, and these were proposals for further consideration. They weren't necessarily on the docket, I guess, per se, as high priority. All of these other listed items were. So you got employee badging, providing tax relief to registered Illinois medical patients at any dispensary in the state, not only at the 55 medical dispensaries, and so much more. You've got things like allowing physical examinations to be performed using telemedicine. In other words, being able to remotely certify for medical cannabis. One big provision that we'll talk about here in a moment was the idea that they were going to remove odor-proof container from the CRTA, which would reduce risk of criminalization for patients and all adults that use cannabis. So let's talk about these two measures that I actually just mentioned, providing tax relief to Illinois registered medical cannabis patients and the odor-proof container. So ultimately, most of these legislative priorities made it into a bill that was House Bill 2911. Now, unfortunately, some provisions, like, for example, increasing the patient plant count limit from 5 plants, were not included in that provision. However, I would say most of these provisions were addressed in some form or another. So, ultimately, from what I had heard, once again, House Bill 2911 was being referred to as the Cannabis Omnibus Bill, and it contained several provisions that advocates and industry participants had been pushing for. Those were those provisions that I was referring to from the first article I displayed. And despite its support base, the bill had encountered opposition from influential stakeholders. According to Illinois Cannabis Equity Coalition, Green Thumb Industries, a licensed cannabis operator, is actively opposing the measure due to a provision relating to medical cannabis patients. As a result, CEIC is calling for a boycott on GTI. Also, the Illinois Sheriff's Association raised concerns about the Cannabis Omnibus Bill, citing language that related to the odor of cannabis. ISA's reservations regarding this element of the bill would maintain the criminalization of cannabis in Illinois, and this move has yet to stimulate a lot of conversations among the state's cannabis enthusiasts and media circles. I feel it's largely gone unreported. So if you'd like to learn more about the odor proof cannabis language, why it exists, and how it impacts people, you can check out this article that I'm displaying right now. You can see a few links. Attorney Galholtra, which is a very well-respected defense attorney, hosted an event on how to transport cannabis, and he talks about this issue of odor proof and how it could affect you. I've also discussed this subject with cannabis defense attorney Evan Bruno, which, from what I understand, he helped to write that language in conjunction with the Illinois State Bar Association so that it could be included in ultimately House Bill 2911. I believe it was originally in a different bill. And so Jim Kychek, a representative for the Illinois Sheriff's Association, voiced his opposition to the language that would address this issue. To satisfy the objections raised by police, the odor-proof language was added back to the bill. And as I mentioned earlier, Green Thumb Industries has been receiving a lot of flack. According to the Cannabis Equity Illinois Coalition, GTI lobbyists worked to block their bill and ultimately remove the tax discount for medical patients from the language. From what I understand, this language was officially removed via an amendment, and ultimately ACE and many other groups that were originally proponents of this bill are still proponents of this bill. But they are not going away quietly. They have asked for people to boycott GTI and their dispensaries and their products. So I had reached out to GTI for a response. I did get a hold of somebody from GTI. It was over the holiday weekend, and ultimately they told me they would get back to me after the holiday weekend. They did not get back to me, but they did post a statement, or at least provide a statement to the Chicago Tribune. I'll read it now. Green Thumb issued a statement that it has always supported patient access to legal cannabis. We have a history of championing patients, including leading advocacy efforts to ensure patients could access their products during the pandemic, and most recently preserve curbside services for patients. The proposed measure, House Bill 2911, GTI said, included language that was neither operationally viable nor comprehensive enough for what Illinois patients deserve, such as requiring patient lanes or offering delivery services. Illinois legislators recognize the concerns and will continue working on this with the goal of passing it during veto session this fall, they say. I'm not sure what they mean by requiring patient lanes. Offering delivery services seem pretty clear, but patient lanes, I don't know if they mean for curbside pickup, because they mentioned that earlier in their statement, or what exactly they're referring to. I don't know if they're referring to the idea that patients get priority at many dispensaries, which means that they get to hop the line over adult use customers. From what I understand, though, that is actually not part of the law. That is just part of many dispensaries standard operating procedure. From what I do understand, though, House Bill 2911, it would have codified curbside for all, and it would have given priority to medical patients. So technically, that would have been the only priority for medical patients that was codified in the law, from what I understand. So on the other side of the fence, that was basically the cannabis omnibus bill. As I stated at the beginning of the podcast, both the cannabis and hemp measures didn't have the required 60 votes to pass. So that was all of the information that I can basically think of right now with regard to the cannabis omnibus. Also, with regard to hemp, it was basically just that apparently it didn't have the required 60 votes to pass. Again, I was in Springfield that day, not the 29th, but the 28th. And I spoke to many House representatives, and they didn't seem confident, at least from the people that I spoke to, which was a fair number of folks, that they would be voting yes. And so, as LaShawn Ford said in WBEZ Chicago, it seemed that both measures didn't have the required 60 votes to pass. And that's ultimately why they didn't get brought up. And I would even say that's why these reforms to the Illinois Prison Review Board didn't get brought up, because it's a measure that was opposed by Pritzker's office. So on one hand, for these two issues, you don't have the support. And on the other hand, support from the House. And on the other hand, you do not have the support from Governor Pritzker's office. So that's basically the size of it. Nothing has changed. Nothing will change for the foreseeable future. The status quo will continue. That was the end of this legislative session. I always joke it's the most wonderful time of year, and it sounds like the next legislative session, which I'm hearing is called veto session, it will be during this fall. Um, Folks, I hope you found value in this episode of the Cole Memo. What are your thoughts? Comment below. I will be candid. I am still learning. So when I say things like I'm hearing it's called veto session, I've also heard that this upcoming session would be lame duck because of like the elections that are occurring and the people that are running. And so it's called a lame duck session. And I remember faintly learning about what that is in high school, and I'm definitely going to Google what it is after I get off this podcast. I say all of this candidly to let you know that I'm still learning as I go, and I am by no means a journalist or studied in any of this. I'm just a passionate cannabis advocate that is doing my best to try and bring about what I believe is meaningful reform in this space, and at the same time share with all of you everything that I'm hearing and learning so that we can work together to make our society better. I know that sounds very idealistic and hopeful, but that's truly the goal. Just to get on, learn, share what I've learned, ask questions. And on that note, once again, if you have any questions that I didn't necessarily address, or if I said anything unclear, or if I said anything incorrect, please comment below. Let me know. Please give this video a thumbs up, and always feel free to reach out at thecolememo.com/contact. Folks, stay well and enjoy your summer. Take care.